Here's a case study that we've got from a farm in the Western District. There were two paddocks side by side. They were identical in every respect, or as identical as you could find in every respect. One paddock was dealt with as a control paddock, the other paddock received 5 applications of Greatland over 2 years, but in every other respect they were treated the same. Everything else was done the same way, except for the fact this happened to be done by aerial spray too, which was really nice for this study because you didn't have vehicles running over the paddocks, which would have altered the characteristics of the paddock ever so slightly. We looked at the microbial biomass, that is more microbes, if you like, or less microbes in the soil. And in the treated paddock, this was done by measuring phospholipid fatty acids. That's the analysis that was done. It doesn't matter what the microbes were, but in the treated paddock, there were more microbes in the soil. Importantly, I think the nitrate nitrogen here, so we're talking about parts per million, milligrams per kilogram, same thing. This is plant tissue analysis, so this is not in the soil, this is in the plant tissue. In the untreated paddock, it was about 550 parts per million, probably a bit too low for that particular farm. Might have been underdoing his nitrogen applications. But remember, they were treated in exactly the same way apart from Greatland. In the treated paddock, the one which had Greatland applied to it, the nitrate nitrogen was 3 times higher, despite the fact that there was no difference in nitrogen inputs.
So what were the nitrogen inputs?
Very low urea, and I can't remember. I'd love to be able to answer that question with a number, but I can't remember.
Do you still need to tickle it along with some nitrogen?
I think so, but a lot less. This was underdone to begin with. This was, clearly from the 550 number, this was a very low amount. And this farmer has been reducing his urea over time, a long way. He's at very low numbers. Mal, you might know what Jack is at.
He's reduced by 60 or 70%.
70%. And he started even when back before Jacob even knew about Terragen, he was only putting on sort of 80s then.
Yeah.
So 60% of that's probably, well,
he's under
about
50.
20.
He's well under 50.
Oh, well under 50, yeah. Shit.
And now that might have been manifesting itself as being pretty low in the plant tissue, but he's got it up to a number that you'd normally be comfortable with, I think.
So can you mix something with Greatlands Plus? Can you put some EZN or anything with that?
You can mix lots of things.
You can mix, we've got a compatibility chart that's that long.
Yeah.
You can mix lots of things with it, except for anything that's a really potent bug killer. Not an insect bug killer, but you know, and something with really potent antimicrobial properties. We would just say don't do it. You can do it a day later or 2 days later, but don't mix it in the same tank. But most things mix, yeah. It's a liquid, it goes perfectly well. A lot of people are mixing other organic, other biological or plant-based products like seaweeds and that sort of stuff. And then there's all these other things, you know, EZN, it's not a problem. And it is heavily diluted when it goes into the tank on the spray rig, so we saw that there was a higher nitrogen uptake in the treated paddock. I think that goes without saying. And the farmer had these observations. His pasture density had increased. He had better grazing patterns, which when I never understood what he meant by that, but when upon interrogation he said the cows just graze more evenly. They weren't looking for that strip down that side where the fence is or where the windrow was. They just graze more evenly. So I kind of interpret that as being, you know, the bricks value of the grasses were just all the same right across the paddock.
Well, from a nutrition, you know, if I saw that as a nutritionist wandering through a paddock, I would say that those species of grass are actually pulling more of the minerals and that naturally across the board into the leaf than, you know, when you see cows, you know, grazing hard along fence lines or licking check banks and stuff like that. They're actually chasing something. They don't do it for, you know, cows don't lie and they can't count. So at the end of the day, they're not doing it because they just felt like it or they're bored. They're actually doing it because there is something.
There's something
they're
here.
chasing.
Yeah. And clearly in this particular case, that farmer says it's just more even right across the paddock, which probably makes his rotation program a lot easier to manage, and just his grasses are better in better condition. And as I said before, there was a noticeable difference in nitrogen uptake. And he's now kind of a full farm applicant, and he's using a lot less urea, as just confirmed.
So we sort of, the studies earlier were on loosening, but Jacob was really great. So Jacob was very, and still is ryegrass driven, but naturally because he's dropped his urea content, his farm's like not a traditional Western District farm because it's north of the highway and that, but he's got a lot more clover now coming through and going with his ryegrass. His ryegrass obviously hangs on, he's actually just not just north of the highway down in Western Victoria, it's a fair way, it's at north of Pernem there. And so his pastures just are hanging on a lot longer going into November, December each year. So, and the biggest thing is he just does not sow the clovers that he used to because they're just naturally hanging on and reproducing and coming back. So, and then he's just topping up with ryegrass and they're moving forward.
Yeah, that's a good observation there, Mel. People who don't have clover, so it's interesting. People who don't have clover in their paddock, or they say, I don't have clover in my paddock, clearly it's got to be there. After applications of Greatland, they say, I've got clover. Some parts of Australia, obviously, clover is not a problem. Now, here's the last one of the case studies I'm going to present. This is a study where we had Greatland applied to the pasture. There were 3 applications, and then we were looking at the productivity of the cows. And this is a classic lactation curve post-peak. We're looking at mid-lactation, we're looking at a period of about 18 weeks. And we've got milk volume on the y-axis, so starting up close to 35 litres a day, post-peak, just post-peak, and we've got this classic drop-off through the mid into later lactation. And it is, I think, quite apparent that the top curve, which is the cows that will grow now, this is 11 paddocks for the treated group and 11 paddocks for the control group. The paddocks are exactly the same, they were measured as the same area. In every respect they were the same, but they were split into 22 paddocks, 11 with Greatland and 11 without. The animals that were grazing on the 11 treated paddocks were separate from the animals that were grazing on the untreated paddocks. I think there was 114 animals in the control group and 93 in the treated group, as it turned out. And average milk volume was clearly better in the animals that were grazing on the treated paddocks. And that was significantly different, and that was a material benefit to the farmer in terms of dollars in his pocket. So I think what we can conclude there is that we can show with Greatland that you get an increase in dry matter on your pasture, you get an improvement in productivity from animals that graze that pasture. And just to pay a little bit of homage to any horticulturists in the audience, we've even done it on iceberg lettuce and we get the same effect there. And we can show effects in grapes, on grapevines, but I'm not going to do any more than that on horticulture, because I think you've all had enough of me, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks very much.